Thirsty for action? Let's crack open the Sunday Six-Pack.
All right, so for those new to the pod, I'll just quickly explain what we do here. We have a draft of our top 6 spread bets for Sunday. We don't include the Monday night game or the Thursday game, so just all the Sunday games. So that's 6 bets a week, 3 each. We alternate who goes first. And we keep score 2 points for each of our top 2 picks, and then our third is worth a single point. And since I won last year, I'm gonna go first in this Sunday Six-Pack, and then Stuck will go first next week, and so on and so forth. And then we also get a point if we hit our total, which will be in the next segment, and if we sweep the Six-Pack and the total. We have to sweep the Six-Pack and the total, right? And then we get a bonus point.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. So if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you check out the podcast in full. And if you're watching this live, I should say, check out the podcast in full. We'll go through every game. We'll also do our favorite totals, teasers, moneyline dogs. But yeah, we do our back and forth draft with Raybon starting it off. Where are you taking us?
I mean, you know where I'm going first. I've been high on this team all off season. Feels like I've been high on this team for years now, but this is the first time I'm really getting to exploit it because the market has finally cooled off on them and cooled off too much. And that is why, for the first pick of the Week 1 2023 Sunday Six-Pack, I'm going with the Tennessee Titans, +3 at the New Orleans Saints. I'll start it off by saying, if you don't know Mike Vrabel's work, get familiar, because he will make you a lot of money as a bettor. Not only is Mike Vrabel 23, 15-1, 61% against the spread as an underdog, not only is Mike Vrabel 22, 9-1, 71% against the spread as an underdog by a field goal or more, Mike Vrabel has a winning record straight up as an underdog. 20-19, 51% are the Titans in games they have been an underdog since Vrabel took over as the head coach. One of my favorite coaches to back, and a perfect situation because the Titans finished 0-7 last year. A lot of recency bias. Well, just for the people that are kind of queasy about that 0-7 finish, let's break this down. First of all, from a macro perspective, Vrabel was 4-0 over season 1 win totals entering last year. The Titans win total was 9.5. They start 7-3.
As the reigning number 1 seed in the
As the reigning number 1 seed in a year where they lost Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator, where Derrick Henry missed 9 games and A.J. Brown missed 4 and most of a fifth. Number 1 seed, 12 wins. Start 7-3 last year. Okay. They become the most injured team in football, and they just whiffed at their backup quarterback. You know, Malik Willis, a lot of people thought he wasn't ready, and he was not. And they got caught up, and they lost games they shouldn't have lost. They had a game where he threw for under 100 yards against the Texans, and they lost. They had a game where they outplayed the Chiefs, but Willis just could not complete forward passes, and they lost. But
and the Dobbs game at the end of the year.
Yeah, and let's also 0-7, really 0-6, because they punted one of the games. They punted the game against Dallas in week 17, rested Derrick Henry so that they would be ready for the win and in game against Jacksonville. And let's not forget that win and in game, they were up with under 3 minutes to go, and Dobbs, as inexperienced quarterbacks that are playing on the practice squad couch are, he got fumble sixth. It happens. But 4 one-score losses in that 7-game losing streak and a fifth game that they punted completely and rested their
with a depleted roster and quarterback injuries.
And most of just the games lost, horrible injury luck. This team is pretty much the same old Titans. Now, I'll say this. Hopkins gives them the best receiver they've had since A.J. Brown. The defense is healthy. Remember, it's still the top run defense by DVOA last year, even with all the injuries. And then the year before, they were top 12 pass defense. I think they can get back to that. They got Byard at safety. They signed Murphy Bunting. Fulton really came on down the stretch, allowed under 6 yards a target and a catch rate, a very low catch rate, about 50-50 over his final 8 games. So got the secondary. That front seven is still ferocious. Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best defenders in football. You got Tart. You added Al Shire. You added Arden Key from the Jaguars, so you weaken them. So great. I expect the defense to be good. Everyone's concerned about the offensive line, rightfully so. I'm concerned about right tackle. Left tackle, I think Dillard can hold up. He's allowed 1 sack on his last 261 pass blocking snaps over his last 2 years in Philly. He's really struggled in his first action in 2020. He was drafted in 2019. Never cracked the lineup, so it's right to be concerned, and there's a lot of moving parts on this line. But I do think Dillard can hold up. Not as confident in the right tackle, but every team is going to have a blemish, a concern. But this is strong in all 3 levels of the defense. Henry's still chugging along, still here early in the season, so if he goes down, he goes down, but he's healthy now. He showed no signs of wearing down last year. Burks, Okonkwo at wide receiver and tight end.
Don't forget about my guy Spears.
Yeah, I was getting to that. Prime for a year 2 leap. And the way I characterize Tajay Spears, best backfield partner for Derrick Henry since DeMarco Murray. That's what I Deion Lewis never really did what I think they wanted him to do, but Murray had a couple good years alongside Henry. I think Spears can give him that, so that should help long term. But this is a strong roster. This is not an 0-7 roster. This is not a 7-10 roster. This is a team that won 9, 10 or more games every other year under Raybon. And even going back to the last year under Malarkey, I think they had a winning record. So, do not sleep on this Titan team. Now, the Saints, I think they're a little bit overvalued in the market because they're in a weak division and they're kind of that default team. Derek Carr is giving people confidence. I'm a little bit skeptical of Carr. His 4 worst seasons as a pro were the 4 years which he's been in year 1 of a new offensive coordinator system. Passer rating, yards per attempt, completion rate, any efficiency metric you could think of, pretty much Carr's worst 4 years are in year 1 of a new system. So I do think that it's not just going to be a seamless transition, to this New Orleans offense. And I don't even know if Carr is going to be able to replicate the numbers Andy Dalton put up last year. Andy Dalton, everyone's like, oh man, the Saints just had terrible quarterback play last year. Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. It's like, nah, Andy Dalton started 14 games and he was pretty solid. His numbers last year better than any of Derek Carr's numbers in year 1 of a new system. Derek Carr, 22 and 40 in those years in a new system, just above 500 in all other years. So I do think there could be some growing pains. Dennis Allen has a 28% career winning percentage as a head coach. He is 40% against the spread at 21-31-1. So the complete anti-Vrabel. So I do not trust the Saints here. I think the Titans are a better team. I think the Titans, a lot of people look at the Saints D. The Saints D got weakened. Ryan Nielsen, one of their D-line coach, went to Atlanta. Caden Ellis, gave him great play at linebacker last year, went to Atlanta. Onyemata went to Atlanta. Jordan, older, he's got to slow down sometime. Demario Davis, older, got to slow down sometime. Tyrann Mathieu, they're relying on a lot of older guys. Taysom Hill even is those mid-30s. Michael Thomas, is there going to be some rust? Is there going to be some chemistry issues? Just a lot of question marks. Bottom line, Saints overvalued in the market. Titans undervalued in the market. Wouldn't be surprised at all if the Titans win this game by even more than one score. But love the +3. I make this number about Saints -1.5, and that's mostly due to home field advantage. All things being equal, I have the Titans and Saints pretty much neck and neck, and the Titans probably a little bit better just because I think they have an intangible edge with Vrabel at a head coach. That's a mismatch, Vrabel against Dennis Allen. So
yeah,
start off with the Titans.
I agree. Coaching mismatch here. Vrabel, I think, is due for a bounce back year. At another stat, he's 14-6-1 against the spread as a road underdog of 3 or more points. That's 70%, covering by almost 5 points per game. And then from a matchup perspective, yes, I'm worried about Petit Frere and the right tackle situation and the rest of the offensive line. But
Petit Frere's out. He's
yeah, that's what I mean.
So
he's suspended for 6 games. So
and he was
that's
terrible.
What I mean, yeah,
probably for the best.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, but I'm not concerned in this matchup. We will talk about that in the next couple weeks when they face some elite pass rushers, where it might be a bigger problem. And on the other side of the ball, you mentioned the new scheme for Carr. I think that this Tennessee front can generate pressure up the middle, and that's really how you throw Carr off. And I think that'll ultimately be the difference. You picked the Titans for your Sunday 6-pack. It would have been one of my picks, so I was disappointed to see you pick it, but it's all about for the net positive of the show, so I completely agree here. All right, so for my first pick of the 2023 Sunday 6-pack and the second overall, I'm going with the Tampa Bay Bucks +6 at the Minnesota Vikings. Why not start the 2023 Sunday 6-pack off with Baker Mayfield? I'm known for starting off with some ugly picks. This one might be up there for the early weeks this season. I just think this number is a bit too high. Look, everyone knows by now the Vikings were fraudulent last year. Fraudulent 13 wins. They won every one-possession game, got every late bounce. And then they come into this year with, I think, a weaker roster, right? I think they're quietly rebuilding. They shedded a lot of the veterans that they had, which I think were smart moves overall. But they're definitely less talented. That defense, I have a lot of respect for Brian Flores, but there's just not a lot of talent there. And what Flores is going to have to do to make up for that, and if you just go by his historical track record, he's going to blitz a lot. And contrary to popular belief, that's not necessarily how you beat Baker Mayfield. Mayfield actually has a better touchdown interception ratio in his career against the blitz than not. How you beat Baker Mayfield is just get natural pressure and have defensive backs, and he's going to make mistakes. I don't think this defense is capable of doing that and taking advantage of a Bucs offensive line that lost some key pieces. They're moving Wirfs to the left side. It is a concern for Tampa moving forward, but I'm not that concerned for this particular matchup. I also really like the offensive coordinator hire. There was just some low-hanging fruit fixes for this Tampa Bay offense, especially on early downs. Mayfield has some familiarity with this scheme as well, has some good receivers that should be able to take advantage of a really, really poor and vulnerable Viking secondary. I think that this could turn into a sneaky shootout, lean a little bit to the over, but the Tampa has the better defense here, and they can keep up with Minnesota if need be. So I like taking the 6 points here. For what it's worth, over the past 25 years, 6+ point dogs in week 1 have covered at about a 60% clip. Kirk Cousins, everyone talks about what time he's playing, as a favorite of greater than 4 points. He's 11-18-1 against the spread. That's 38%. That includes 7-15-1, 31.8% against the spread at home as a favorite of more than 4 points. I think this is too many points. I think Tampa Bay is being slept on a little bit too much, and this is a pretty good matchup for them, all things considered. I think this is close. Would not be shocked to see the Bucs pull off the outright upset. So give me Tampa Bay +6 as my first pick.
Love it. Another one of my look-ahead picks. So, would have picked this one if you hadn't. So I guess we're even there. But love the pick, and totally agree. This is just a Minnesota team that's pretty mediocre, and a Bucs team still has a good defense, and not really a matchup that scares you for Mayfield. And the weakness of that Vikings team is the cornerback position. So Evans and Godwin, as long as they're healthy, should be able to do some damage and keep the Bucs in this game.
Yeah, the Bucs defense, it's still pretty good at all three levels. They had a lot of injuries last year. It was still a playoff team. The depth is concerning, but that's not a huge deal in the first week.
Absolutely not. Yeah, this is the time. Eventually the Bucs are going to probably, run out of gas. Their depth is really concerning on offense and on the line, and even at receiver. They lose one of those two guys, it's probably over. But until that happens, love the Bucs getting 6 points here on the road. For my second pick and the third overall of the Week 1 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with, the Cleveland Browns plus 2.5. Essentially just
the worst Week 1 team in the history of the NFL.
Oh yeah, I hate it against Joe Burrow, who does nothing but cover. But this is what we got to do. Take the value on the board. And when I look at this Cleveland team, I don't see that much discrepancy between the talent on the Cleveland Browns and the talent on the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Browns did a lot of good things in this offseason to put them in position to compete in what is going to be a gauntlet of an AFC and especially AFC North. You got Zadarius Smith on the edge to complement Myles Garrett. You got Dalvin Tomlinson from Minnesota, right? So that was one of those things we talked about. Dalvin Tomlinson, big addition. Big addition.
Yeah, they needed to add both to help that run defense, which was very leaky.
Yep. So, and just overall, I won't go through all the names, but expect this pass rush to be improved. Expect the run defense to be improved for Cleveland. And Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, he's changing up the whole scheme. And there's a lot of talent here all over. The cornerbacks. Now, the one thing to watch for, Denzel Ward, concussion protocol, that would be a blow. Not enough for me to get off the Browns as a 2.5 point home, as a home dog, really, period, in this spot. But that is concerning. That would knock a couple of tenths off the of my projection. I think I have it Bengals favored by about a half point or a point, something like that. But you got talent on every level of this defense. Juan Thornhill at safety. You got Delpit. You got Emerson. You got Newsome at corner. Mentioned Garrett. All these guys. So one of the big things with Schwartz, though, he's allowing the talent to play. Under Joe Woods, the previous defensive coordinator, there was a lot of read and react and just, guys just had to think more than I think they should have out there. And it led to some bad results and players didn't like it. And you could just see it, and just, they just didn't have enough bodies on the interior against the run. So now all these things have been rectified. And how do you beat Joe Burrow? Kind of talk about this. I mean, this will be a recurring theme. And pressure, I would say this. You're a new bettor, casual bettor, and you want a thing to kind of pay attention to get an edge. Focus on pressure. Which quarterbacks, every quarterback's going to be worse under pressure, but which offensive lines are going to give it up, which schemes are going to be able to generate it, who's going to be able to do it with just 4, who's going to have to bring blitzers, who can hold up on the back end, all those kind of things. That is one of the biggest edges that's really difficult to quantify, and a lot of times that Stuckey, you and I end up talking about. And in this case, I think the Browns can get home with 4. Schwartz is aggressive, but I think he knows, he's not stupid. He's not going to just all out blitz Burrow, but they have enough talent. Garrett, Okonkwo, Unkaronkwo, excuse me. Smith, all these guys, they're going to be able to get home. And that's how you get to Burrow. He takes sacks.
That's why we see the Browns defense had success in the past.
Yeah, exactly. And that was with a much less talented defensive roster and a much, I would say, worse defensive coordinator. So that is essentially why I like the Browns. Obviously, Burrow gives them the edge at quarterback, but I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to have to do anything special. I don't think he's going to have to put up 35, 40 points because I think this is going to be a defensive game. It's a divisional game. Watson has faced the Bengals before now. He lost the game, but now he's got some experience. So I think this should be a pretty smooth operation here, and expecting the Browns to turn around their week 1 luck. And they have had success in the past against Cincinnati, especially in Cleveland. That is one thing. The Browns have had success against the Bengals. And week 1 divisional underdogs that missed the playoffs the year before, the market tends to undervalue teams like that. Maybe it's recency bias. Maybe it's just, they didn't make the playoffs. They're not that good. But 55-23-2, 71% against the spread, or week 1 divisional dogs that missed the playoffs last year since 2005. And in the first 3 weeks of the season, divisional home dogs absolutely crush 64% against the spread, 60-34-2 since 2005, according to our Action Labs data. So I am going with Cleveland plus 2.5. I'd take this down to 1 because it's inside the 3. It's almost certainly not going to get there. So at this point, you're really just banking on Cleveland winning the game here. Hopefully there's no kicker shenanigans, though. They did move on from Cade York and signed Dustin Hopkins, who has been pretty solid. So hopefully there's no kicker shenanigans with the Browns. It's probably my biggest worry, or at least it would have been if York was still there.
Yeah, I love the Browns. This was my second pick that I had. So he stole another one from me. It's also worth noting Joe Burrow might struggle out of the gates, right? For the third straight year, he's dealt with an issue, whether it was an appendix or knee or calf. Third straight year, he's missed time leading up to the season. The past 2 seasons, they've gone 1-3 over the first 2 games, and he hasn't been that good. I think he has the same amount of touchdowns and interceptions. They lost to Mitch Trubisky, Andy Dalton, and Cooper Rush were the 3 losses that Burrow suffered in the first 2 games. Watson, we'll see what his ceiling is this year, but he should be better. He came back last week after 700 days off. He's got a full off season now. And yeah, I love the Browns off season. New defensive coordinator should fix a lot of just the communications on the back end that plagued them. Run defense. They added the bulk there, which was required. They needed that. They did that. They added some speed at wide receiver. All the roster issues, the defensive coordinator, they had one of the best off seasons in all of football. And the Bengals, on the other hand, I think they come into the season a bit overvalued. They've really benefited from injury luck up until their offensive line at the end of the year, but not just themselves being healthy. The entire division has been just injured or suspended for the past 2 seasons. And look who they faced last year. Here are the quarterbacks they faced during the 13-win season. Mitch Trubisky, Cooper Rush, Joe Flacco, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett, PJ Walker, Anthony Brown. None of those quarterbacks, a bunch of them aren't even in the league anymore, are starters this year. They also faced Watson on his second game back. You even faced a backup in the playoffs in a game they should have lost against Tyler Huntley and the Ravens. So, and this is a team that, has to replace 3 defensive back starters. And they have another one coming back from an injury who hasn't gotten much run of late. That includes both starting veteran safeties who allowed a really good defensive coordinator ultimate flexibility in what they did. And he would change from half to half, make a lot of different changes. Might not have that same luxury, especially early on in the season. I really like the Browns. I will say Ward injury is worth monitoring. Sitting at 2.5 now, you might get some more good news with Burrow, and maybe Ward gets ruled out with a concussion. Hard to tell with those. So maybe it gets to 3, which I would love. So more harm in locking that in now if you're listening. Wait for some news and see if this gets to 3, but I agree. Love the Browns. For my second pick and the 4th overall of the Week 1 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Green Bay Packers +1. As always, make sure shop around, see if you can find a +1.5 out there. I talked about this with you all off season. I'm way higher on the Packers than the market, and I'm lower on the Bears. Still not sold on Justin Fields and his accuracy. Well, he could prove it like Jalen Hurts did, but I need to see it. I like what I've seen from Love so far, although in limited sample size. But this Packers team, I think, just has a significantly better roster, better defense, way better offensive line, especially when you consider all of the juggling that Chicago has to do with some of the injuries that they've suffered, and have, even some guys that are going to play have been banged up during camp. This was a historically bad defense last year, historically bad offensive line. I don't think they've really fixed those issues. Maybe in the long term, the offensive line, I think, is going to be a little bit better. But hey, you went out and splashed with 2 linebackers. It's the least important position on a defense. I think the Packers can have some success here moving the ball. Last year when they swept the Bears, by the way, they leaned on their ground game. I mean, they just ran all over the Bears. They can do that again. The Bears aren't really going to generate much pressure. That's a really welcome environment for a young quarterback making his second career start, because he did cover as an underdog in Kansas City for what it's worth. Matt LaFleur is 13-4 against the spread, 76.5% as an underdog. I just think the Packers are a better roster. I trust their defense. I trust their offensive line. And I think the Bears, with these offensive line issues headed into this game, are in trouble. I think Green Bay gets the road win to kick off the season. Go, Pack, go. I know you disagree with this one. We're finally getting some disagreement.
I don't disagree as much as you probably think I do. I think this game is largely a toss-up. I'm not down on the Bears to the point where I'm ready to just say they're just going to blow week 1 at home. But I do have something else on this game, so I'll table this discussion. But I don't hate the pick. You know, a divisional dog, week 1, pretty evenly matched teams, and you know, everyone's reminder: Wednesday practice reports do not matter. And last we're talking about a Thursday game. Nothing. Wednesday practice reports. It's just got every team goes about it different. Some guys just like to rest guys. Some guys just put everyone on to make sure they're compliant. So don't get caught up in those. Friday is the real important day. That's when you're going to start to see what's going on and what's going down. So I'm just saying that because I know Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, the Packers' top 2 receivers, are on the injury report on Wednesday, and they're not practicing. Oh my God. Doesn't matter.
By the way, Green Bay last year, 67, if you exclude knees, 67 rushes for 381 yards in 2 meetings with Chicago. That's 5.7 yards per carry. The Chargers, who were the worst run defense in the NFL in yards per rush allowed, were at 5.4. And talked about Fields' struggles. He really struggled against the Packers. He had 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in those 2 meetings. In comparison, he had 17 touchdowns to 8 interceptions in the other 13 games played. But I think Green Bay gets it done on the road.
I mean, you're telling me that the Packers have this big edge on the ground, and then you're complaining to me that the Bears spent money on in the middle. Like, the linebackers should help that run defense out. The
Bears' run defense should be a little better, but I don't think they're going to completely shut down the Packers' ground game here. I only bring that up, and I also don't think the Bears are going to be able to generate pressure. And I only bring up those 2 points because those are 2 really important crutches on the road for a very young quarterback, right? Not having to worry about pressure, can lean a little bit on the ground game to get comfortable. So I think that those 2 facets matter. And the Bears' offensive line was already a mess. I think that they added some pieces to give them a little more promise. But with some of the injuries and pieces that they have to shuffle around, I mean, whenever you're trading for Dan Feeney, I know it's probably provides some depth. It's not in great shape. But where are you going next?
I don't want to see Cody Whitehair in the middle of my interior line. I'm not even going to disagree with you there. But I am going to close out the 6-pack for myself with my third pick, the 5th overall of the Week 1 Sunday 6-pack. And let's get super ugly here. This is a Action Network Sunday 6-pack kind of staple kind of pick because it's ugly, but I think the number's too large. And that is the Houston Texans +10 at BetMGM at the Baltimore Ravens. I know the Ravens have been very good for the most part in Week 1 under Harbaugh. They are 11-4 against the spread. So let's get that out of the way now. And I still think this number is too big. It's hard to cover 10 points in the NFL because now you're talking about a touchdown, a field goal, and then another score. So, not an easy thing, but this is about me just wanting to get ahead of the fact that I think the market is a little too low on the Texans. We talked in our happy hour show about how we both believe the Colts are the worst team than the Texans. And that the market doesn't seem to agree. That people might not realize that the Texans are no longer tanking. Whether they were right about Stroud or not, they went ahead and then they packaged their first round pick next year for Will Anderson, an edge rusher. So they're trying to do a rebuild rather than a tank, and they're trying to do like a speeded up rebuild with, kind of more in the eyes, like they want to be more competitive is what I'm getting at. They signed Jimmy Ward at safety. They signed Sheldon Rankins on the D-line, Robert Woods at Noah Brown at wide receiver, Dalton Schultz at tight end, Devin Singletary in the backfield. I know I'm missing a couple guys on defense as well, but overall, when you look at this Texans roster up and down, I would say Laramie Tunsil is probably the only elite player. But compared to years past, I'm not really seeing a lot of starters anyway for the Texans that I'm like, oh my God, this guy's completely terrible. This guy's trash. It's a black hole. They're just playing him because they're tanking. Like it's a higher floor team than we've seen out of the Texans. I happen to have a lot of respect for DeMeco Ryans. And by the way, first time rookie head coaches in their first road game have crushed it against the spread. So if you wanted kind of a counter trend to the Harbaugh doing well in week one, since 2002, rookie head coaches 56, 39, and 2, 58% against the spread in their first road game. And this is the time you want to fade Lamar Jackson, who I love the fact that they're going with a more pass-heavy approach, but first game in a new scheme, coming off an injury last year, a little bit of a weird offseason, but Jackson is a perfect 5-0 against the spread as an underdog over the past 2 seasons. As a favorite, 5-14, 26% against the spread, including 1-11 when favored by more than a field goal. Like if this trend keeps up, the Ravens are going to be the new Chiefs, where, okay, they're a very good team. They should probably win a lot of games, but anytime they're favored by more than a Justin Tucker, fade them. So I know you are a Ravens fan and you always have a lot of intel. So I don't know where you are on this one, but from my vantage point, I have this more as in the 8-ish range, 8.5-ish, and I'm getting 10 here. So with a team that I think is going to be a little bit better than people think. Ravens are dealing with some injuries. Again, higher floor roster. They should be able to, protect Stroud, not make him make too many mistakes. And on the other side, this defense for the Texans, pretty solid. So I don't necessarily think the Ravens are just going to blow the Texans out of the building. I think the Texans will generally play close games all year. Probably have, if I was to guess, I would say the Texans would be one of my best bets to finish with, the top against the spread record, or top 5 against the spread record, because everyone thinks they're so terrible. And I don't think they're great. I don't think they have a high ceiling team, but I do think they're a high floor team that can keep games within, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 points, 10 points. So
yeah, if I had to bet this, I probably would go Texans. The loss of Marlon Humphrey is huge for the Ravens defense. He allows their defense to do so many things. They don't have a great natural edge rush. They use a lot of disguise and simulated pressures and bringing pressure from different places. That's big. The one thing that concerns me, though, is, you have a rookie quarterback, which, for what it's worth, and rookie quarterbacks to start in week one have gone 15-13 against the spread over the past 20 years. So, but what would concern me is Stroud on the road in a hostile environment with an offensive line that has 6 guys on IR, and Titus Howard is probably not going to play. They're signing guys, trading for guys that are going to start like within the last week. So the offensive line, how will it hold up, is a major question mark for me. And then the Ravens offense, it's either going to be a rocket. You could argue that it's going to be the uncertainty factor here, or like there's rust. But I'll have more to say about this later on the podcast when we talk about our favorite totals for a little teaser. But I'll just close out the 2023 week 1 Sunday Six Pack with my third pick and the 6th overall. my first four that I had that I wanted to go with were the Browns, which you took, the Titans, which you took, and then I was able to get two of mine in the Packers and the Bucks. So the other game that I show some value on and I'm going to bet it is the Indianapolis Colts +5, a team that I'm super low on for this year, but high on them for this spot. This is the AFC South special, by the way. The team that's supposed to suck in week one pulls the outright upset over the team favored to win the division.
Yep.
There's a couple things. Look, number one, I think Jacksonville's a bit overrated coming into the season. They'd everything bounce right last year. I know their offense took off in the second half of the year. By the way, they started passing a lot, going faster, and the Colts might pass a lot here, and they were using some tempo. So this could be a sneaky over. But the Jags secondary is terrible. Their defensive front seven's dealing with a number of different injuries for a team that had no injuries last year. One of the other things that really went well for them. But with the Colts, there's no Jonathan Taylor. I think that might actually work in their favor here, right? You have a new head coach, pretty sharp offensive mind, and then you have a new quarterback. Don't really know what we're going to see overall, but they can really attack this poor Jacksonville secondary. And I think that they're going to be able to score. I think that Richardson's eventually going to struggle, and this Colts team, look, the defense is bad. Jacksonville should be able to put points up on them. But this is just a sneaky, we talked about how successful home dogs have been, especially within division in week one. I think this line is just a tad too high in a game where it might just be back and forth throughout. And I wouldn't be surprised to see like the Colts get a win here and then they lose like their next 7. So I think at +5, there's some value in the Colts. So that's where I'm going for my final pick of the week 1 Sunday 6-pack. Let's sweep the board.
Yes, sir. And I'm glad you took this because I did want to hear your opinion on it because this was a game I kind of struggled to handicap a little bit. I'm just down on both of these teams, but really down on the Colts. But the one thing with Jacksonville that kind of made me hesitant to back the Colts, even though they are, these spots have been money, is they didn't fire Gus Bradley somehow. Like somehow Gus Bradley is back again. 3 straight bottom 10 finishes for 3 different teams. And the Colts are the ones to bring him back yet again in a league that's going more and more too high. He's still running his cover 1, cover 3 single high. And Trevor Lawrence just eviscerated that last year. He completed, 20 of 22 passes in the first matchup. And then in the second matchup, I think it was like 20 out of 25 or something. He essentially completed 90% of his passes against this defense and is just overall one of the best quarterbacks against those single high coverages. And that should only get better with Calvin Ridley. So maybe Bradley switches it up. But yeah, 25 of 30 in the first matchup, 20 of 22 in the second matchup, 45 of 52 overall. But to your point, that second matchup when Lawrence went 20 of 22, Colts won that game, 34-27. And that kind of speaks to my concern with Jacksonville. Don't think the defense is great. Maybe it, doesn't hurt him quite as much because, you're going to probably play a lot of zone against Richardson to stop him from running, right? And that is what the Jaguars are better at. They really struggle, even Campbell, when they go to man coverage. So, I don't have a great read on it, but 5 points at, on the road, Jacksonville is lying here.
Yeah, in division week 1 with a bad day. Yeah. Give me the points and sneaky overlook too.
That's probably even might be uglier than my Texans.
Bucks,
I don't know.
Bucks, Colts, and Packers.
I like
let's
it.
go.
I like it. I got the Titans +3, the Browns +2.5. Could wait. See if you get a +3. I'd rather wait and get a +3 and risk going down to 2 and than not. So
yeah, and there's no, for people new, there's no pushes in our contest. So for the contest, there's no difference between 2.5 and 3.
Yeah,
pushes in a win. But yeah, if you're waiting on the Browns, I would wait for Denzel Ward news and see where that goes. It's worth waiting to see if the 3 pops.
Yep. So again, Stuck has Tampa Bay +6, Green Bay +1, the Colts +5. I have the Titans +3, Browns +2.5, Texans +10. That is going to wrap it for our week 1 Sunday 6-pack.